Hoi! New World Season 5 has been announced and it's actually coming with a lot of good news, a lot of interesting news, and a lot of things that will make the game more interesting. I did not quite expect as much with this season, and there's at least some stuff here that I think is worth looking forward to. Now, we got information both from a post as well as from the dev talk, and they kind of add to each other. They give a lot of information that the other one doesn't give, so I'm going to give you both summarized somewhat. First of all, an announcement from the dev talk, which is that the announcement was delayed. So the big May roadmap update will now be happening in June. So even the roadmap for the roadmap was wrong, I suppose. Not exactly a good sign there, of course, but on the other hand, it was just news that they were gonna announce. I was assuming it's gonna come 1 month later anyways. So I guess it'll just be announced when it comes or whatever, because it seems, so far at least, that this season is going to be the regular 3-month based on all the information that we have. So I'm not really sure exactly this will really change other than us getting the information a little bit later. We'll find out. Other than that, there are also 2 changes coming in this patch that are not in the written notes, but that I think are absolutely worth pointing out. On one hand, that is Magnify. Now, Magnify will work in a way where you choose the attribute that all of your Magnify points will go towards. You can't choose to distribute them between all of them or split them or something, but you can just choose the attribute that they go into and you can switch that, so Magnify is going to be a lot easier to use. What they didn't mention are the current stat split system for Magnify, if they're going to be removed or if you are forced to assign Magnify yourself. But either way, I think overall it's going to make the whole system a lot more effective, sustainable, less annoying in most situations. Additionally, the cost for respecs has been reduced to 50 coins. This is great news for everyone who's testing stuff frequently respecking. I was kind of hoping they would go with the SLOTH route, but I think 50 gold or 50 coins is so cheap that it's no longer really a big concern anyways. And that brings us to the announced changes and upcoming content. The update will be releasing on March 12th, and the first piece of major content that we're getting here is of course the trial that they already talked about, the Winter Rune Forge, a 10 max level player trial, mini raid, whatever, that will require teamwork to overcome rune puzzles, slay an icy construct, and fell an ancient ice guardian for unique rewards. Now, what we also learned about this is that it is somewhat like hatchery and should not be as difficult as Sandworm, but they said it's probably like a little bit more on the pug-friendly side, but still challenging. So there's a lot of positioning required, for example, and you need to solve these puzzles, which I'm assuming is going to happen within the fight as well. I'm guessing this is not going to be too hard overall, just because this gates certain rewards that would really upset people if it was too hard to get, being some dark matter, but more importantly, new artifacts, which can drop twice per week. And after that, you have bonus rewards that you can get as many times as you want, so you can farm it more often, but you don't have the chance for the artifact, apparently. So with the new artifacts, there's also another change that is worth noting, which is that you now can have 10 active artifact quests at the same time, so that's going to be way less annoying. Not sure why it took them so long to make that particular change. There are 8 new artifacts, 6 of which were already shown on the show, but then 2 more on top of that. I will discuss the artifacts in detail in a separate video, so just a very quick overview here at this point to talk about them as they are and not how effective they will be. So first we have Sin, a hatchet with corruption that makes debuffs last 25% longer. It works on both of your weapons, so might be some kind of utility there. And it also has Defile, which deals 2% more damage per debuff on the target, which shows up on other weapons too, so this may actually just be a mistake. Either it's a bug on other weapons, or it's actually not a unique perk on this and just a new perk. I don't know. One of the two. Then we have Venom, a spear with the poison tip perk. Heavy attacks with either weapon cause poison, dealing 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. Again, obviously with interesting synergy with other weapons. Overall, I think more interesting than the hatchet, when the hatchet is kind of going in the same direction as the previous hatchet was also kind of focused on throwing playstyles. We have Tempest Fury, a great axe with the momentum perk. Successful attacks gain 3% movement speed for 3 seconds. works on both weapons and stacks up to 10 times. This also has a secondary perk, which is Endless Spin, which makes Whirlwind spin an extra 10 times. Nature's Wrath is a medium chest piece with the Nature's Blessing perk. Empower expires 200% faster, but you deal 20% more damage. So I'm not sure if this means 20% damage in general, which would be crazy, or if this means 20% more damage during Empowers, which would be a lot less crazy. Then it could be effective for weapons that quickly refresh Empower. Gilly's Gravity Gauntlets, a heavy glove. Whenever you take damage, you gain a charge that increases the damage of your next attack by 3% with a maximum of 10 charges. Keep in mind, this is just off your next attack, so it's not very consistent damage increase compared to, say, Jasper. Ironheart is heavy legwear. When not in a heavy loadout, you gain 20% more maximum health. There are medium loadouts where this could work, but I'm not sure how effective that will be. But that's worth talking about in more detail in the future. Consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you're interested in more details about that. Crit boots are light footwear with the Ambush perk. Deal 15% more damage and 25% critical chance as long as you haven't hit the target within 20 seconds. I don't like that idea. I think that's very risky. Again, more talk about that soon. Phoenix is an amulet that comes with the Phoenix Revival perk. This is probably the most questionable perk that you could imagine, being when you have received lethal damage, avoid death and become invulnerable for 2 seconds on a 180 seconds or 3 minutes cooldown. That after the changes to Hatchet that kind of nerfed this kind of effect doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It also seems to come with Purify as well as Stamina Recovery, which you usually wouldn't get together. So yeah, this seems kind of wild. And I think you can choose the third perk, so you even have some flexibility there. Really not sure about this one, and if it will make it out of PTR, to be honest. We of course have a new Season Pass, not really anything special to mention here other than that. But more importantly, we have a cooking and other trade skill changes. So I mentioned updates to ingredients, revamped cooking progression, legendary fish recipe tweaks, and the removal of split attribute food and more. They'll have additional details to share in a future deep dive article, and they're also going to do a video specifically on that. So generally what they're doing is they're greatly cutting back on the amount of different recipes just to make things less messy, and also tuning the XP curves to overall make it smoother and quicker to level. They're planning to do similar things for other trade skills based on the feedback that they're getting here in the future, so that could be interesting. And with the split stat foods, with the removal, they're converting those into the primary stat of the food. So for example, if you had strength and focus food, that would turn into strength food of the equal tier, which means that most of it won't have that much value unless they make further changes in that direction, because banana tier would still be above all of those anyways, and there is no split stat version of banana food at the moment. Crafting and gathering foods will only have one tier now, which greatly declutters things, and the level requirement for those will be lowered correspondingly, so that things are less messy in that regard. The combat and animation system is getting an overhaul. The combat rework is finally here, and they do expect some issues with that. So they say that the code is now natively compiled C++ code, which apparently, according to them, just translates to that things being way faster in general, and fixes also being deployable faster. So they say that these changes that they've made are especially beneficial during high player density, for example during wars or OPR. They're redoing the core scripting for animation and combat logic, which they hope will lead to improved performance, be much more debuggable, so bugs are easier to fix, and desync should be easier to fix. They say there may be an initial hump while they're trying to iron out kinks, and the day one improvement won't be dramatic, but improvement after that will be much easier, which makes sense if they're switching to a different system. So there will be some bugs, there will be some problems with some animations that are probably not working right, and once they've sorted those out and that is something they can do quicker, that they can then improve upon that quicker as well. And they also say that overall this will have a reduced memory footprint on both the server as well as your own client. As promised, controller support is coming, and there's quite a lot coming with it. They say this is a first step, of course, but they already have, for example, a virtual cursor for menu selection. They call it like a radial wheel for quick access of certain things, which I think increases the usability on a controller quite drastically. There's unfortunately no remapping for controls yet. That is coming later. You can also see that there are various other settings here in terms of movement, target lock, aim assist and all that. A lot of this is now AI only. So aim assist and enemy target lock is AI only. Target friction is the only thing that is controller only, but target friction by itself usually is less of a problem because the precision with a mouse is naturally higher, so the target friction is kind of just offsetting that a little bit. Again, this always depends on aggressiveness and everything, but generally I think as long as most of this stays focused on AI, it won't really have much of an impact on PvP unless people find a way to make it apply to PvP anyways. There are also some other changes, like for example, use camera direction for melee attacks. This allows you to face somewhere else and use a block, for example, and then your character will block in that direction. Whereas at the moment, if you face somewhere else, if you turn your camera while standing still and then you block, your character turns toward where the camera is facing. Could be some use cases for this, could be interesting, but yeah, this is primarily something useful for console. The main story quest is fully updated to level 60, so that includes Ebonscale Reach and Shattered Mountain. There are 2 new soul trials, and all of the quest line can be soloed now. One of the biggest PvP changes that we're seeing is one that was originally tested in PTR, and then they initially thought that they shouldn't do it. I said they should absolutely do it, and I think it will be a great improvement, and that is mounts in Outpost Rush. This means there will be more backcapping, but this drastically cuts down the time that you spend walking around and walking from point to point, and increases the time that you're actually experiencing PvP. So I think this is very good for the mode, and I'm very hopeful that this will make OPR at least somewhat more engaging, and also leads to some better ranged versus melee balance in my opinion, because melees will be able to close the gap a little bit more, a little bit quicker, so there's a bit more pressure on ranged players. So I think this is a great change. Events-wise, we're seeing the return of both Rabbit's Revenge, and also we have Springtide Bloom coming back with some overhauled rewards as well. PTR is planned to launch on February 14. We'll of course try things out there, and we'll let you know more about that. So if you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Also, if you want to hear more about the new artifacts and my thoughts on their balance and everything. If you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon and get early trading tips in return. Thanks to my patrons who already do exactly that. And thank you for watching. Sloth out.